Welcome to Definitely Not Funny. Actually, the least funny person I know. Welcome, Josie.
Thank you.
I'm so excited to have you. This is so fun. So Josie and I went to USC together. We were in the same sorority, shocker. And
Shocker.
yeah, Josie has had a little bout with mental health stuff and a fun little journey. And yeah, I'll let you kind of introduce yourself, where you're from, like where you grew up, how you ended up in LA.
Yes. So I'm originally from Fort Worth, Texas. A lot of people don't know what that is, but I like to brag that it is the 13th largest city in the U.S.
Is it really?
Yes. I know, yeah.
Fort Worth, not Dallas Fort Worth, just
No,
Fort Worth itself?
Fort Worth. Like Dallas itself is like a
Number
different
7
rank.
or
Yeah,
something.
like
Yeah.
above us, but whatever. Anyways, I grew up dancing competitively. Like my entire life was academics and dance, and I traveled a lot around the country for that, and I was in LA every summer training, and I've always loved storytelling and creativity and being around artists, and decided, oh, Zeke, are you gonna
Zeke's
are you
like, I have
gonna
something to
chime in?
say.
And when I started looking at colleges and school, I was like, oh, I really like love LA. I want to be in a creative place where I can do like literally anything and everything, like land of opportunity. And Annenberg, the communication and journalism school, is really great at USC. And like there was the Greek life and athletics and just like everything I could want. They have the dance team, the Song Girls. I was so excited, my naive little self back in the day. And just everything kind of fell into place, and I got in and made it out here, and now I work at CAA in the MP literary department. So I'm an assistant to an agent who represents directors and writers and some actors. So yeah, that's my life story in
In a nutshell.
seconds.
Fuck yeah. Okay, well, the interview's done. It was so nice having you.
Thank you so much.
Love doing that. So, okay, so you were always a dancer.
Yes.
And
yes.
what type of dance? Like, was it specific to a certain type of dance, or was it just like you did everything?
I did everything.
What was your favorite?
My favorite was jazz and hip hop.
Yeah.
So jazz is like an upbeat, like technical form of dance, and I was just always better at like these like high energy styles rather than ballet is like such a hard, like you have to be so disciplined, like oftentimes have a certain body type, and like that just wasn't me. And so yeah, like jazz, hip hop, that was my thing. But I trained in everything, and I'm really glad I did, because it's all like kind of a big synergy of like learning how to tap is like great for rhythm for other styles, and like ballet is like gonna give you the strength for other styles. So that was my like entire life and my entire identity as well. So
did growing up dancing impact your relationship with like your body image, and kind of do you think it had any impact and made you more aware like in your younger years, if that makes sense?
Great question. I think yes, in like a complex way, that dance is an art form that you're using your body. So of course there's going to be like complications with food, and I think the aesthetic part of dance is also makes that like body food relationship complicated.
Yeah.
And of course, like I have to credit my dance teachers growing up for like being so great about it, and like it was never for me, like it was never about winning every single time. It was not Dance Moms. Thank God. It was never about winning every single time. It was not like, oh my gosh, you have to be a certain weight. You have to be a certain this. You have to be a certain that. It was very much a very inclusive studio I grew up in, and it was for the love of dance. And so I grew up loving it so much. And I think that in the world in general, diet culture is just existent in every facet of our lives.
Yeah.
It's a part of patriarchy and white supremacy, and like I could go on for hours about that. But I think I grew up like in like Instagram became a thing when I was in like 7th, 8th grade. And so like being exposed to diet culture on the internet, I think like there was some part of me that was like, oh, I need to not eat this or not eat that, and like kind of creating these food rules for myself that weren't necessarily coming from dance. They were just coming from the world. And it never got to a point where I was like really struggling with disordered eating, I would say. And I was moving so much all the time, like hours a day,
Yes.
every day, not to burn calories, but to get stronger, to be able to do certain dance moves, to be able to do certain techniques. And I think that's what's so great about dance is it's never about working out. It's about being able to do amazing, amazing things.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about it so much.
Yeah. Okay, that makes total sense. Irrespective of like eating, I guess intertwined with eating stuff, prior to going to college, what was your relationship and experience with mental health?
Almost non-existent, I gotta
Yeah.
say. And that's not like, I'd say, okay. So I think like honestly, my first real experience with mental health was I had a boyfriend who lived in Canada while I lived in Texas.
Where'd you find him?
On the dance circuit.
Okay.
Which is kind of wild. And I remember him talking about, he was like 3 years older than me, I think. And he would talk about his anxiety. And I was like, oh, like my only experience with this is like in health class, like the gym teacher who has to be a teacher part-time too. Talking about sex ed and whatever the hell would be like, oh, like suicide is so bad, like help a friend, like just the like cookie cutter things that they teach you in school. So hearing about his experience with anxiety, I was like, oh my God, I can't imagine, like, oh, like I feel so much for you, when in reality, like I was a very anxious child.
Yeah.
And a very type A, hard on myself, negative core beliefs child. But it was, never to a point where my parents were like, oh, we're so worried about you. So I think near the end of high school, I was so stressed about getting into USC, and like I didn't love growing up in Texas. I mean, I'm so glad I did, and I love my family to death, but it's a very conservative place. It's a very, like, there was just the bubble of the same rich white kids running around, and it's like you can't really escape. And traveling for dance, I was like, I got to get out of here. So I think there was this enormous pressure to like get into USC or get into a school somewhere where I feel like I could really expand my horizons and like work really hard and be around like-minded people. And I like went to therapy a couple times in high school, but yeah, I mean, before the experience that we're about to talk about,
stay tuned.
there wasn't much, to be honest. So
Okay.
it was interesting.
Interesting. So you get to USC and you join the Song Girl team.
Yes.
Can you elaborate more on like what your experience was auditioning, showing up, being like, I'm at school, I want to join Song Girls, this is what I want to do. What's the audition process like? And kind of when it was fresh and shiny and new and exciting.
Oh, yes.
What was that like?
Back in the day. Coming to USC was so exciting. I'm like, oh my God, I got in. I'm around all these like-minded people. Like I'm in a sorority. I have 250 new friends.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, like the only thing I need to complete like the fall I came to school was I'm going to audition to be a Song Girl. Really hope I make it.
And can you explain what the Song Girls are?
Yes. So everyone's like, do you sing? And I'm like, no.
No. You're like, it's a little
I wish.
confusing.
I honestly wish. Song Girls is the dance team at USC that dances at football games, basketball games. We do volleyball games and baseball games sometimes. But I think they are really like the face of like USC spirit.
Completely.
And they are beautiful. They are skinny. They can dance. Like they are like, at least this was my wee perspective going in.
And this has been the case for like 80 years.
Yes, like since quite literally 1960s.
Yes.
And I was like, I want to be a part of that. Like, of course, like my type A, like I'm so drawn to like being a part of something like that. And the audition process was, there was like 100 girls in the room. We're all wearing our numbers. We learn a combination, go across the floor, like show off like different techniques that we could do. And there was a panel of judges, like primarily former Song Girls, deciding like who's gonna make the cut.
Who are graduated?
Yes, graduated, like all different ages. There were some people that were like, a couple years out that were like former captains, up to like, again, like this organization started
like
in the
in their
1960s,
70s, yes.
like very old. Yes.
Yes.
So there was a preliminary round. I got called back for like the final round, did the dance a couple more times, had to like choreograph a solo routine. And that same day of the finals, I found out I made it.
Wow.
And I was stoked.
Like, for context, how many girls are on the team?
There were 13 that year.
There's like yes, there's
Yes.
less than 15 girls on the team, it's a very big deal if someone's on the Song Girls. Like, it was kind of like the, like, oh, like, if you see someone with a Song Girl backpack walking around campus, it's like, wait, that's a big deal. So I'm just clarifying that for everyone listening.
Yeah,
That must have been really exciting to get it.
It was, and I think as a freshman too,
Yeah.
it was like, okay, I've been a dancer my whole life. Like, coming to USC, like, I wanted that to still be a part of my identity.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I did it. I made it. Like, let's freaking go have the best 4 years of my life. And it was, but in a much different way than I initially anticipated. So
Once you joined the team, you meet the other girls. What was that like initially?
intimidating, but also exciting. I was like, oh my gosh, these are like the coolest girls, like the richest girls from the East and West Coast. Like,
Yeah.
it was really intimidating, but at the same time, like, I knew that my dancing level was up to par. Like,
Yeah.
honestly, like, I was not the best dancer in the room was my friend Tyler Harvey, who I love to shout her out anytime I can. But I was like up there of like one of the best dancers in the room, and that was
Yeah.
exciting to me. Because again, like, you're chosen based on how you look. Like, there was an interview process as well. Like, I left that out. And they ask you questions like to kind of get a personality check on you. So it's like being like this like quote full package.
Yes.
And not just how you dance. But it was intimidating, but I was like, okay, at least I have this going in. Like, I might not be the prettiest, I might not be the smallest, but like, I can dance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. What was the point in your Song Girl experience when you realized that being a Song Girl was about much more than just dancing?
So disappointing. So like the very beginning of the experience, like I started practicing like a couple weeks after the auditions with like the team that was currently there. It's a calendar year commitment. So I'd auditioned in October, found out like maybe the first week of November that I was on the team. We like almost immediately started practicing, getting measured for uniforms, and that was all still very exciting. We come back before everyone comes back from like winter break. We come back a day early, start learning like 20 dance routines.
Yeah. And you guys practice, what is it, 3 hours a day, 7 days a week or something?
It was, when I was there, it was 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, but then we had like games and sometimes weekend rehearsals, but a lot of times it was just like the games.
It's like, it's a
significant commitment. Like, can't do internships.
No.
Don't really have time for anything else.
Yeah.
Which I think is by design. But besides the point, coming back from winter break and just being like bombarded with like so much information. I'm like, okay, I can do this. I can learn the dances. But like there were a couple girls returning to the team from the year prior, and kind of right off the bat, they weren't super warm and welcoming. And it's hard because like it's possible that some of them listen to this. Like, we can get more into that later about like how I feel about talking about this in quote public. But that's when I was like, oh, this kind of sucks, like a little bit. And the more weeks that went on, like very early that winter of 2018, I was like, this feels really disorganized. It feels so much about the way you look. Like, the conversations in the room were like, oh my God, my nail is broken. I feel so trashy, or like, I'm not put together. A lot of talk about food and snacks and working out and just not like super healthy conversations. And that was kind of normal to me back in that time.
Yeah.
But obviously now I look back and I'm like, that was really not healthy and really toxic. But I like very early on, I was like, this is not what I initially anticipated it and hoped for it to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was like the turning point? What happened actually once you were like in season then performing? Was it competitive within the team?
Yeah. So because it's a calendar year commitment, you start by doing basketball season in the winter. And then all summer, you're still doing performances at school for like incoming freshmen. And doing like gigs at people's houses, like things like people who
alumni
have like the band and the Song Girls at their party or whatever. And then football season is in the fall. So it's kind of nice because you get to like learn everything, and then football season is like
the big thing.
The big finale almost.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, that winter during basketball season, things just like I said earlier, like things felt a little disorganized, and like it was way more about look and less about dancing, and like things started to pop up that like did not feel right to me. The first like bad body experience that I remember is the captain of our team one day after practice was like, hey, like everybody, like I need to chat with you all after practice, like nothing bad, like let's just hang out outside of the Lion Center, which was the gym that we practiced at the time. And we all are sitting down on these steps. I just remember it so vividly because it was so like emotionally impactful. And she's like, hey, I'm not here to tell anyone that their body is ugly, but we just like really need to be careful about what we're putting in our bodies, because someone went up to our coach, Lori, at the time and said, like, the Song Girls aren't looking as fit as usual. And mind you, like, these are the smallest girls in the school.
Tiny.
We are moving our bodies 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, at minimum. And so
Everyone looks like a Barbie.
Yes.
Yes.
And there's this pressure to feel that way and like spend money on it. And yeah, so many things. But I immediately took that to heart, and the captain even like not waved, but like motioned to me and was like, I know it's so hard when you're eating in a freshman dining hall, and like continued on the conversation. But I was like, oh my God, she pointed at me, like I'm the biggest girl on this team, like I need to stop eating immediately, like I need to go on a diet, I need this, I need that. Like it was just like a spiral of anxiety about like I'm not good enough, and like I'm just a freshman trying to prove myself.
Yeah.
And so from that point on, like I started not eating enough food. I would like eat a protein bar in the morning, not eat lunch, not eat anything all day, so that I could go to practice having like not eaten anything. And I thought that made me look smaller.
Yeah.
And then that went on for like a long time. And I would eat just like very little, enough to like quote keep me going, because again I was exercising for 3 hours a day, every day, doing a full class load, like trying to go out and have fun with my friends and just like live a normal college life. But I like severely restricted my calorie intake, thinking like that's gonna help me. I started obsessively weighing myself and obsessively looking at myself in the mirror and like body checking, and I, again, like thought that that was normal and that I was doing the right thing for like the good of the team and the good of my body and the good of myself in the end, because I was like, this is how I fit in. This is how I become good enough. And like, this is how I gain control over their thoughts of me, like their idea of who I am, how they perceive me as this, like, I want to be this perfect, again, Barbie doll, tiny, can dance really well, performer, icon of this school. And there was a lot of pressure associated with that. I really internalized it, and that was the beginning of my eating disorder.
Wow. Was there, and I could be pulling this out of my ass.
Yeah.
I heard that on Song Girls, you have a contract where you can't lose or gain within a 5-pound range.
Yes. So, yes, when you make the team, you are given a contract. Like there was a meeting right after we all found out we made it. You're given a contract that says like what you can and can't do. We were not allowed to post anything on social media in clothing that covered less than what our uniform did. So like no midriff showing, like too much cleavage was too much, and like
so you couldn't pose in like a bathing suit.
No. So that was any previous photos I had in a bathing suit, I had to like archive or delete.
Oh my gosh.
So there was that aspect of it. A lot of like general like, you're going to be practicing this much, like this is how like we choose who goes to which games, like a lot of like general logistics, but like a lot of red flags, like the social media was one of them. Yes, there was a rule that you could not gain or lose 5 pounds than your audition weight. So when you audition, you write down what weight you are. And I had written like X amount of pounds. I was like, I kind of guessed. Like I didn't obsessively weigh myself, so I didn't really know.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I can like fudge it a few pounds. Like
my last physical, this is what I want.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like didn't bring a scale to me with college. but I did not bring a scale with me to college. Like there was no need.
Which is normal.
Healthy and normal. So yeah, there was that thought in the back of my mind as well. Like I hadn't necessarily heard of anyone patrolling that. Like there were no actual weigh-ins, which was like, oh my God, they're so healthy for not weighing us in, because other schools, like I'd other friends who were dancers at other schools that they were doing that. So that was also a part of it, definitely in the back of my mind. Yes.
Wow. Okay. So then can you elaborate a little bit more on your experience with disordered eating?
Yes. So kind of where I left off of like kind of the beginning of just like severely restricting my calorie intake. That's where it started with the captain of our team kind of conveying the information that our bodies were not good enough to us. That's where it started. But like as time went on, when you restrict for that long, that much, your body's like, I'm absolutely fucking hungry. Like, am I allowed to say fuck? Yes. Okay, great.
Yes, you definitely
I'm like
can.
thinking of celebrity. I'm like, I'm a celebrity. I can't say fuck on the Jimmy Kimmel show.
You can say But Jackie Norris one you can.
This is my main character moment. Okay.
Exactly.
Anyways, my body became really fucking hungry. And I don't know the science behind this. Maybe I should at this point because I've been dealing with this for so many years, but there's some people who like become anorexic like that way and just like don't eat and kind of rewire their brains to think like they become really anxious around food, and there's a whole chemical imbalance there. But for me, it was like, I'm not allowed to eat. There's a part of me that wants to be a rebel. And also I'm just really fucking hungry. Like again, exercising so much, having to use my brain so much. I'm like a freshman in college.
Yeah.
And also wanting to have fun with my friends. And there was a point in time where I would get home to my dorm at like 1 a.m. after whatever the hell I was doing and be like, I cannot focus on writing this paper right now. Like I am absolutely starving. All I can think about is food. And when you're that hungry, your body's like, I need the quickest energy possible, which is going to be carbs and sugar and like fats like peanut butter. Yeah. And so I would get back to my dorm and just binge eat like crazy. Like, I remember the Trader Joe's peanut butter cups being like a very popular like gift to send to your friends through Greek life. And I remember one night eating like an entire, not the small pack, the big pack
one,
of the Trader Joe's peanut butter cups and being like, holy shit, I just ate that entire thing. And then instead of thinking logically like, oh my God, I'm really hungry, like I haven't been eating properly for months, it's like, I am a horrible person. I have no discipline. I have no self-control. Yes. And that went on for a couple of months. And when you're eating like 5,000 calories at night, every night, or maybe not every night, but multiple times a week, I did start to gain weight. Yeah. And also our exercise regimen for Song Girls was, we were doing a lot of workouts and I was gaining a lot of muscle I never had. So I did start to gain weight. And my coach started to notice. So there were like little ways that she would make it known that she had noticed and make it known that I had gained weight. So there was a time when we were cheering for basketball and it was like the slightest possibility that USC was going to go to the NCAA tournament. Okay. And in that case, we were like, quote unquote, gonna take a charter plane, which I don't think that was ever really a thing. I don't know, whatever, it's a theory. Yeah. But my coach texted us in a group chat being like, hey, can everyone send their first and last name as it appears on your ID and your weight? In a group chat of 13 girls. What? And I was like, by this point it had been a couple months. It was like mid-March. And I was like, oh my God, I know I've gained weight.
Is this of your freshman year still?
Yes. Yeah. Wow. Spring semester freshman year. I'm 18 years old. And in the group chat, people start sending their weights, like their licenses, whatever. And
why did she say she needed your weight?
So my theory is like she was trying to like get some of us, or at least me, to admit that I had gained weight. And I felt so guilty and felt like such a horrible person that I had gained weight.
Yeah.
That I sent a separate text to her and was like, hey, Lori, like, FYI, I now weigh like 7 pounds more than I did when I auditioned. And I'm so sorry. Like, I feel like such a letdown. And I'm working with my mom to like get on a diet to make sure that like I don't gain more weight and that I am like back at my audition weight. And she sent a text back being like, oh, like it was a very like politely packaged text.
Yes.
And it's in the article, the LA Times article that ended up coming out about it. But it was a very politely packaged text that was like, oh, if you just like focus on eating the right foods, like the weight will adjust quickly. So it was like, in my mind, confirmed that like I was not the weight I was supposed to be at. And again, like it was never confirmed on a scale necessarily, but I feel like I could tell from the way I looked. Like I've always been a very like muscular person, body. And yeah, I was very worried and I was very anxious and depressed about it. And again, like felt like I was just not good enough.
Yeah.
So that happened. There was another weekend where I needed a mental health reset because like an RA in our dorm had died. And it just being so stressed and anxious, that was like something like that was going to be way more impactful than if I was in a healthy mindset.
Yeah.
And I came back on Monday and all of my friends were like, yo, you wouldn't believe like what Lori and the returners is what we called the girls who were veterans were talking about in practice. Like they were pulling up all of these pictures of previous Song Girls with like muffin tops and essentially girls who they thought were not fit enough or small enough, and being like, oh my gosh, like this girl's so skinny, but like she still has a muffin top. And like the goal of that conversation was to tell us like, you better be in shape by football season or else. And there were these halter uniforms that were like a special privilege, like essentially in everything under like, I think it was 79 degrees, where you wear these long sweaters that are like very, very classic. I love the traditional uniform. That's what I will say.
I can't believe you would wear it in 70 degrees.
It was crazy.
That's
but
hot.
anyways, but when it's like 110 degrees at the Coliseum, like that's actual like physical abuse to make us wear the sweaters. So there was these halter uniforms that like barely showed midriff, were like almost like tank tops. And that conversation they were having was like, unfortunately right now, you guys are not in shape to wear these halter uniforms. And you need to get there by football season or it's going to be really bad, essentially, was like the point of that conversation. And I was just like devastated hearing that even secondhand from my friends. And I was like, it was kind of like a universe thing that I wasn't there, because I probably would have like spiraled and had a meltdown. And there was another, I want to say, incident or like really inciting factor of everything. There's this charity event called Swim with Mike.
Yeah.
Where it's a fundraiser for disabled athletes, which is like really freaking cool. And the Song Girls every year wear bikinis and like get in the pool and do this relay race with the football players. And there was this whole like big ordeal.
And they have you do a relay race in a bikini.
Yes.
Okay.
And I don't know why. It was weird.
All right. We'll put a pin in that.
We'll put a pin in that and come back to the whole like misogyny and like of it all. But anyways, there was this whole ordeal over like what bathing suits like we were gonna wear to swim with Mike. And like our captain was like, everyone needs to be exercising extra, running outside of practice, like getting extra cardio in. I think our coach at one point made it like mandated, like everyone has to do an hour of cardio outside of practice every single day. And we had like a buddy system to like hold us accountable.
Oh my God.
And I think that was her way of like being fed information of like so-and-so's not doing their cardio. Like she had her like, the returners were like her little minions I want to say, of like, what are people gossiping about? Is there any unrest? Is there any like anything going on the team that she needed to worry about in order to like lose control of everyone? But anyways, there was that whole ordeal over the bathing suits and like having to try them on in the bathroom in front of everyone. And like, I remember I had boobs, and like not a lot of people on the team did, and I also have like a normal. I don't want to say I have a huge ass, but like I do.
You have a great butt.
Thank you so much, Jackie.
You're welcome.
Anyways, like I remember being handed a size large and being like, oh my God, like I'm the only one on the team wearing a size fucking Target large bikini. And like being so ashamed of that and being
Because
ashamed.
these girls are
like,
extra smalls.
Yes, and being ashamed, like walking out of the bathroom stall in front of my coach and having her look at how I looked in this
is like
bikini.
I'm going to take a minute. This is crazy to me that this is a charity event. And for the charity event, one, they're having you wear bikini. To have you swim athletically and not a one piece is bizarre to me. And then they're having you wear bikinis. And then instead of just like showing up to the charity event and handing you your bikinis and being like, okay, get in the pool, there's a pre-event to try on the bikinis and show everyone the bikini to make sure it's good. Like,
yeah,
that's blowing my mind.
I mean, I love hearing that nowadays because when I was going through it, I was like, this is normal. And like,
Of course you would think that.
I'm the one who's crazy and I'm the one who is not good enough. And that was such a hard time. And again, like there's the aspect of these like direct body comparison incidents that are happening, but also our coach was being really shady about communicating with us, and the returners were, you know, she was the one who, our captain was the one who originally said like your bodies aren't good enough, and it was just this very like shady, like not good vibe at all. And like I'd come from a dance studio that was so inclusive and fun and like this is about dancing and recreation, and it was just like months into it, it was like, okay, yes, I am not good enough and I have this whole like negative core belief system about, you know, why I don't fit in here and why this isn't good, why I'm not good for this, but also this idea of like I had started to realize like this is not normal or okay in a lot of ways, and like some of my friends were feeling that way too, but it was like we were gonna be made to feel like we were crazy if we spoke up against the coach and the returners, and like they kept a very tight grip around the way we were communicating and the way that we were like pushing back on some of these things. And so it was very, very hard. And like being an 18-year-old, like very impressionable young person was really, really tough. So, yeah.
Oh my God.
And then also the day of Swim with Mike, I want to add that the returners got to get in the pool with the football players and do this relay race, which to add on to that, like you're just sitting in a pool floaty, which is so it's not like an actual athletic swim competition. Like the football players are pushing you in these floaties, but also like
wait, this is so much worse.
I know. It's so weird. It's so odd. Anyways, okay. I love the idea of team spirit and charity, and there's also like a belly flop portion of it where like one of the girls is in uniform and does a belly flop. Like there's fun parts of it. There's also a lot of really weird parts of it that I think still exist to this day.
Probably.
But the returners got to wear their bikinis, and our coach made us put on Lululemon skirts, like tennis skirts, over our bikinis. And then we got to go stand out there in the Lululemon skirts while these older returners got to do the relay race in the pool. And then finally at the end, Lori's like, okay, like you can jump in the pool and take off your skirts. And it was like, we just weren't allowed to do it, like, because our bodies weren't good enough. And again, like I was internalizing thinking like, this is all just about me. Like I am the biggest girl on this team and and like everyone else is suffering because of it. Like that was what my anxiety was telling me.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was fun.
Yeah. Which I can understand why it would be telling you that. Oh my God. Okay, so this is still, we haven't even gotten to football season yet.
No, we haven't even gotten to me going to treatment yet.
Yeah.
So I guess that's like kind of the next like natural part of the story was I had become so anxious and depressed, and like also that was like my first real I didn't drink in high school really, so that was like my first year with like alcohol and partying, so there was just like a lot going on in my little noggin. I remember one day like being really hungover like from a night out, and I was like triggered by the bottle girls and how small they were, And it had been like a really hard week of practice. And I remember being like, there is something wrong with me. And this is not normal. And like, I need to do something about it because I can't live like this. Like, I was sitting in practice being like, okay, I've had Starbucks egg white bites, which are X amount of calories. Plus I had a clementine, which is going to be like 30 calories. Like, I was obsessing about it. Obsessing to the point where like I couldn't stay present in a conversation with my friends that had nothing to do with Song Girls. And I was like, this is like inching its way outside of this part of my life. And like, that's never happened to me. And that's weird. So I start Googling symptoms like sugar addiction, obsessive compulsive disorder. I was like, I'm obsessively thinking about food and then compulsively eating. And I came across binge eating disorder, which is like restricting your food intake and then binging a lot of times at night or after a long period of restricting and feeling insanely guilty about it after. And I was like, check. Like, all of these symptoms are me to a T. And I remember calling my mom being like, oh my God, Mom, like there's something like wrong with me. I think I have an eating disorder. Like, I'm really struggling. Like, I need help. And
What's the time period for this right now?
This is like April. So like after all this, this swim with Mike stuff, I was like, end of my freshman year, I was like, there's something severely wrong. Like 4.5, 5 months in. Yeah.
Okay.
I call my mom. She's like, oh my gosh, we're going to get you help. Like, don't worry about it. I love you. Like, she was the most supportive, amazing human. And at the time, both of us were like very entrenched in diet culture. So she did say to me, she's like, just try not to binge. And I hold no resentment towards her for saying something like that. Cause like we both just like knew nothing about it at the time, but it was like, I was still in this diet culture mindset.
Yeah.
So it's summer in a couple weeks. Like, I make it through finals. It was hell. I was binging like crazy, being stressed about schoolwork. But I go home to Fort Worth for a couple weeks and I see the therapist I'd seen a couple times in high school.
Okay.
And she's like, this is not my forte. Like, I'm going to send you to a dietitian who does know more about this. Was sent to a dietitian. But I was like, I have to go back to school and do all these performances over the summer. Like, I had no intention of stopping. Because I was like, okay, like, this is a thing in my life, but it's not like I need to, like, stop, like, halt my life and focus on this. I was like, I'm going to keep going. Found a dietitian in LA. Her name is Ashley Litwin. Big shout out. The most amazing, life-changing person. And my first session, she was like, I was introduced to the concept of intuitive eating and just the fact that like everything that had been said to me in these practices was like very wrong and very not normal. And I was like, whoa, like it's giving explosions going off in my brain because, my whole life I thought like diet culture was normal and the idea that like we should always be striving to be smaller is normal in or outside of Song Girls. And my mind was so warped. Hi, Zeke. Yeah, we don't like diet culture. And I was seeing a therapist and a dietitian simultaneously because you kind of do the mental and the physical aspect of it.
Yeah.
But I was still like so unwell that one day my therapist was like, you, I think, would really benefit from going to intensive outpatient treatment.
Yeah.
Which is a 3-hour day, typically a 3-hour day program where you're like going to a clinic, center, whatever, for a couple hours a day for like however long you need, really. So I was like, yeah, I think that might be smart. Like, it's still summer. Like, I don't want to have to put off school, but like I'm still pretty severely binging and like really anxious and depressed still.
Yeah.
And when you have more time in the summer to like contemplate life.
Yeah, it gets worse.
It gets worse. So I decided to do intensive outpatient treatment. It was really scary. And
in LA?
In LA, yes, so that I could like still do the dancing, still like be here, etc., and like not have to halt my life. But I remember in your episode about going to McLean, talking about all the paperwork and like finding the right place. Like, it is a freaking process. And like, I was so privileged and still am to have a mom who was like on the computer every day, like looking up the best places in LA to go for this and like had the recommendations of my therapist and figuring out what worked with my schedule, like how to bill it to insurance. Like there are so many steps, and it's just still to this day like horrible to me that mental health treatment is not accessible to all. And it's stigmatized, but also just so expensive. And started intensive outpatient treatment. It was like the scariest thing of my life for the first few days. And then as I kind of settled in, like started to meet the other people there, I was like, this is the best experience of my entire life.
Wow.
Like the best thing, I think you said the same thing of like, this is the best thing I could have done for my self-care. But I like really leaned into it, like went in guns blazing. And I think I was very lucky that I wanted to do it. I wanted to get better.
Yes.
I think part of that had to do with like, I need to not have binge eating disorder so that I don't continue to gain weight.
Yes.
But also, I don't want this to control my life for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And if I put in the work now, like hopefully I won't have to deal with it as much throughout my life. And I just met the most amazing human beings, all of the staff there. Like I still
Where
to
did
this
you go?
day, Center for Discovery. It's in
Okay.
Beverly Hills. I mean, there's like locations everywhere, but
Yeah.
I went to Beverly Hills. So I was that summer going 5 days a week. And then when school started, I was still going 3 hours a day. So like
Wow.
I had to schedule all my classes around going from like 4 to
Yeah.
7 every day.
Were you still doing Song Girls?
I was still doing Song Girls.
What time was that practice?
That was Monday, Wednesday, Friday was 12:30 to 3:30. So
You go
I had
straight from that.
yes, I go straight from that to treatment. Tuesday, Thursday, it was 5:30 to 8:30, so I had to like that's a whole nother part of it that I completely skipped over was like telling my coach that
gonna say,
like
how did you
I
tell
had to go to treatment.
Yeah.
I was really scared, and I did not want to be told like, oh, like if you have an eating disorder, you can't do the team anymore. Like I still wanted
Yeah.
to dance. I still wanted to be with like the friends that I had made.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I've come this far. Like I have to do football season. Like this is like
Yeah,
why
yeah,
everyone
yeah.
does it. So yeah, telling my coach was a very scary thing. My mom actually was in town that summer. She actually like to go back to rewind in the story was one of my dance teachers growing up.
Oh.
And was out with like all the kids like training in LA for the summer. Came with me to tell my coach. I texted her, I was like, hey, like, I have something really important to talk about. My mom's gonna come, like, can we set a meeting? And I go in and explain, like, I have an eating disorder. It's
Yeah.
binge eating disorder. I'm okay. Like, I'm obviously still dancing, still doing these gigs, but like, it's really hard. And I might have to skip out some days when I'm feeling really stressed or anxious. And I'm also gonna have to leave practice early on Tuesdays.
Yeah.
To go to treatment.
Yeah.
And she was very polite, very kind,
Yep.
very like, I'm so glad you're getting the help you need. But there was also like, oh my God, I would have never known. Like, you never have lost energy. Like, you seem so happy. Like, this just really doesn't happen to that many people. Like, there's like maybe 2 or 3 girls out of the 50 years of Song Girls that I've known that have had an eating disorder. So I'm like, oh my God, yeah, like it's just my fault. It's my
Oh
genetics. Like
God.
I'm just too sensitive. I'm just too type A. And like my mom thought the same thing at the time. Like,
Yeah.
to be honest, like that was the narrative around it. And again, like I don't resent my mom for that. And that's conversations we had to have later. But
Yeah.
that was just the narrative at the time. But then in treatment, the narrative was starting to switch of like, no, actually, like this is really toxic and unhealthy
Yeah.
from, yes, the parental standpoint, but like from the Song Girls, like insane. Like the other people in my group were like, oh my God, you have to be in a room with those people for 3 hours every day.
Yeah.
And I was like,
And it's not just a room. It's a room with a full wall mirror.
full wall. Oh yeah. Yeah. Yes. And like we talked about the obsession a little bit earlier of like my calorie counting, but I'm standing next to, again, like the smallest Barbie dolls and being like, oh my God, just from looking in the mirror, my thigh looks 5 inches bigger than the
Yeah.
girl next to me. So yeah, that was all a big part of it. And in treatment, like we described it as like my armor of like, what tools am I going to use to get through it?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, I still really wanted to dance. I wanted to be a part of it.
Yeah.
And I wanted to like, for myself, be like, I can beat this. I can do this.
Yeah.
And that's what I did for football season. And I even like kind of started to push back of like, if someone was having like a toxic conversation about what they ate that day, I'd be like, oh my gosh, guys, let's change the subject.
Yeah.
And like, what party did everyone go to last night?
Exactly. Or like, what'd you learn in class? Like,
Yeah, exactly. I was like, let's talk about normal people things, perhaps. And so like it started to shift, but there was still this idea in my mind that like, I just like, it's my fault and my genetics that I have an eating disorder and I just can't fit in here. One of the early like pushbacks that I kind of made in front of a room was like, once I had been going to treatment for some time and realized like this is really toxic and bad, like there was one day where the whole team was in a petty fight about who got to go to the UT game and like,
yeah, how do they pick who goes to which game?
so the number of gigs, so like
Yeah.
performances you did over the summer, like the more you did, the more choice you got in what away games you got to go to.
Okay.
And it goes by seniority as well. And so like I was a freshman, I was like, I'm gonna do as many performances as I can because
course,
like I want to
to
go to
the
all
games.
these like great games. And being from Texas, like my friend Tyler and I were like, oh, we really would love to perform at UT. Like our grandparents can drive down and watch us. But like,
Oh, yeah.
again, petty fight. The seniors did not want that. They were like, this is our game. This is our senior trip. So there's this conversation we're having in the room one day just about like the pettiness. And then it starts like snowballing into like everyone airing their grievances. And it was like my coach and the captain sitting at the front of the mirror and like all of us just sitting on the ground on our yoga mats. Like we had not started working out because like everyone was like so on edge and just like about to explode.
Yeah.
And at a point in the conversation, I was like, there have been inappropriate body comments made in this room. And the captain said to me, you just have to understand that this is so much bigger than you. And that was the day I was like, I can't be a part of this again. Like
Oh my God.
that was the day I was like, this is wild. And my coach was sitting right there saying nothing. And
Oh my God.
that was wild. So anyways, I was like trying to like explain myself, and other like seniors and returners were chiming in being like, I'm just so grateful to be here. Like we should just be so grateful to be here, you guys.
Oh my God.
Kind of this just like gaslighting. And that's when I realized I was like, you know what? I'm gonna finish football season, but like
You're out of that.
I'm obviously trying to like be heard and say that this is unhealthy and inappropriate, and like I'm just not going to be heard.
Yep.
And there was one day where I had a 45-minute conversation with the captain about like things. I was like, can this please be changed? Like there's so much potential. This is like so toxic and unhealthy. And I was just told over and over and over, like, this just doesn't happen to that many people. Like you're like kind of one in a million.
Like there's something wrong with you.
There's something wrong with you. Not those words exactly, but like essentially. And so I didn't re-audition. I cried. All of my friends like walked back into the audition room to do it again. And I was like, this sucks. Like I'm giving up my entire identity that I've had since I was quite literally 2 years old. But I just can't do this anymore. Like what if at that point I had really like recovered, and like I hadn't had a binge eating episode since like the day I started treatment, because I simultaneously started medication for the first time in my life. Lexapro Girlies Unite. So I had like recovered at that point, and I was like, I don't want to relapse. And also this is a horribly toxic place that I can't fix. Yes. And so that was really hard not re-auditioning, but I like left on a good note with everyone. I was like, I'm just going to keep the peace for the rest of the season. Like, it's not worth it. It's not worth, I'm like, you got to pick and choose your battles. And then I went off on my merry way onto Theta Exec.
Yep.
And, but I mean, in the years after that, I was a very angry person, like very angry person. And anytime I felt like someone was like trying to like run over me or something felt unjust, like I was very angry and like very not myself. And I think it was just very misplaced. Like I was very angry with my parents for some things, with the coach, with the captain, with the other returners, with the other women on the team who I felt like didn't support me. And it was very misplaced. And that was really hard. Like I had a harder relationship with my parents. I had a harder relationship with my friends. Like there was like a shedding of friends almost, of like I'm a new person. Like my life has to reflect that as well.
Your sport was taken from you.
Yeah, my sport was taken from me. It felt like my life was taken from me, and I was very angry. But on the flip side, I had a much, much, much better relationship with food, with exercise, with myself. Like I like going to treatment was like taking a college course on myself, like understanding like what are my negative core beliefs, what are the tools that I need to use, like how do I like use reframing techniques and like all these cognitive behavioral therapy skills to like live my life as a normal person.
Yeah.
And I started exploring like other things that I was interested in. But yeah, I was angry, and that kind of went on until at the beginning of the pandemic, like quite literally a few weeks before March 13th, 2020. One of those returners who I had a complicated relationship with because she was a friend and like we had gone through so much together, but also she was one of the people that made some of those negative body comments.
Yeah.
Comes to me and she's like, I just finished my 3rd year on the team and like, this doesn't feel right. And like, if you'd be interested in like telling your story, like I think I might be too. And we kind of like, the pandemic happened, but then a couple months later we were like, maybe we should do something about this. And we started by talking to some people in the athletics department, but they were like, Song Girls is part of student affairs. So we were like getting thrown around to like all different people, all different departments. But finally the school started a Title IX investigation against the coach, Lori.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, it finally feels like, you know, like I've been stewing about this for years and like almost regretting that I didn't do more, but like now's my chance to do something and like make it better for other people. Like by then I was going into senior year, so I couldn't be on the team again because of the calendar year aspect of it. But I was like, I can like hopefully make this better for someone else because there's just so much potential and like no need for the toxicity.
Yeah.
And a Title IX investigation, I had like no idea what that was at the time, but my senior year on Zoom during COVID school, had to talk to lawyers for like hours upon hours, like probably 9 to 12 hours total in different sessions, just like telling my story of like every little thing that happened. And like my therapist would join them with me to make sure that I wasn't like gonna have a breakdown in the middle of it. And it was like really hard to relive everything. But I felt really supported by those lawyers that were helping us, and it's like a third party, so they're like not with USC, so that it's like unbiased or whatever. And then all of that evidence, like all of what they wrote down was in like documents upon documents. And by that point, like the returner who came to me and was like, you should tell your story, like what happened to you is really messed up. Also, I'm really sorry for my part of it. I was like, don't worry, like you are just being manipulated by an adult with more power than you. Like I don't blame you at all. We had rallied like other women who also experienced either negative body comments, like racism, any type of other like misogyny or gender-based harassment. And that's like what it was based on is, gender-based harassment. So any type of like discrimination or comments or anything that like had to do with how we looked is like technically gender-based harassment because it's how you look as a woman or like how you present yourself to the world. And so we went through like months of like having to do these interviews with lawyers and like continued. I think there was like maybe 10 or 12 people by that point that over the years, like you kind of learned like who the resistance fighters were.
Yeah.
And we all kind of rallied together and were like, this is really hard and like girls in the past had gotten blacklisted from coming back to alumni events for speaking out. Like there's this really, really, really amazing woman named Alexa Trujillo who did a TED Talk years prior to when I was even on the team about the discrimination that she faced and like not making the team because she didn't have the body for it, according to the coach. So we like knew who the resistance fighters were, and like I don't think I would have been brave enough to stand up and say something or do anything without like those women coming before me.
Because you got shut down so many times.
So many times. And like they did too. And it's like at the end of the day, like they did too.
Yeah.
And it's like, how worth it is this going to be? Like I was anxious every day about like being invalidated and like having it hurt even more. So then the coach got to see the files, like everything that we had said about her, which was like really anxiety inducing. And like, we were all like immediately blocked on social media if we weren't already. Like it was a scary time. And then we got to read what she said and what her witnesses said. And it was really disappointing reading what like some of the older women, like some girls that were in our sorority said about me and my body. And like, oh my God, like people were coming up to me saying like, who's that fat song girl? Like, so mind you, I had already gone through so much on the team. I have to go through even more of like people's comments about my body during that time. And like, thank God I had been going to therapy, still do, every single week. So like I had a lot more tools going through this investigation than I did when I actually, was in the peak of my eating disorder.
Oh my God.
But I had to read like people that I thought were my friends or at least not an enemy.
Yeah.
What they had to say about me. They were attacking other people's character. Wow. Just like adding irrelevant things, to be honest, like grasping for straws of like why we were wrong. But none of it has to do with character. It all has to do with like what was actually said in the room and if that is gender-based discrimination, harassment. And the school was taking like 10,000 years, as USC does, naturally, to get anything done. And it came to a point where we were like, there was even more like harassment and retaliation going on with like current members of the team, which like that's their story to tell. It's also in the LA Times article. And kind of the group of us who had rallied to do something about it were like, maybe we should take this to the press.
Yeah.
We stay in the press. I'm kidding. That's what my brother says, my sweet brother. But anyways, like it was something like we wanted to be taken seriously. And we were like, you know what? Even if the school doesn't take us seriously, like people in the real world are going to take us seriously if we tell our stories, because at the end of the day, like we know we are valid and like
this is absurd.
And it's absurd. And my thought was like, if I can help one singular person get through an eating disorder or recognize that they have an eating disorder, then like I can die. I've done my job on this planet.
Yeah.
And so I remember like being home over winter break and getting a call from the LA Times reporter and like just being so scared. I'm like, what if like at that point in life I was such a people pleaser. And I was like, I don't want to have any beef with anyone. Like, I don't want anyone to hate me.
Yeah.
And I knew that people weren't going, like, I was going to make enemies by speaking out. People that were still in school with me, people that had recently graduated, people that I had once been, like, very close friends and or roommates with. We're like, I was going to end a friendship forever.
Yeah.
But I was like, I have to stick to my values at the end of the day. And if they don't fit in my life with my values, that's their problem and not mine.
Yeah.
And that was really scary, but also refreshing. So over a couple phone calls, I told my story to the LA Times reporter, and like multiple other women were at the same time. And there was always a question of like, was my name going to be in it? And I had been so open about my story to like my friends.
Yeah.
Because I like want mental health and treatment to be normal. Like I know we're very like-minded in that way. Yeah. And that's like one of the reasons I love Jackie Norris so much.
The feeling is mutual.
Thank you. I'd been so open about it. I was like, you know what? I think I want my name to be in this to like add credibility.
Yeah.
And I, I'd had leadership positions within the USC community. I was a part of a different part of a lot of different clubs, like post Song Girls.
Yeah.
And I was like, I think this would mean a lot if my name was in this and like people could see like, oh my gosh, she's doing okay.
Yeah.
Like in the real world, I see her walking on campus. She's not dead. That's
Yeah.
great. So I decided to put my name in it, but knowing that like I was going to be a hated woman by some people, and that was really scary. And the months I had like given my testimony or my information to the reporter in like January, and this was second semester senior year, and there was just like months on end of like, when is this going to come out?
Yeah.
Months.
Because it didn't come out till like May or something.
It came out like, I think it was April 26th.
I think it might have been this specific date.
I think
That's
that was the Sunday it ran in print. But I was anxious for months on end, like crying every day.
Yeah.
Of like, what is going to happen with this? Like, am I going to be validated? Mind you, the investigation with the school is still going on, and like we're going back and forth, like with more and more evidence with the school investigation. But I was like, you know what? I think this could be really helpful to some people. It's a part of my healing. Like, I just need to do it. And the day that the article came out was like one of the most memorable days of my life. Like, I was just so surrounded by so much support, by so many loving people. Like, I remember my situationships at the time being like, yo, like, really cool what you did with the article, bro. And I was like, oh my God, thanks.
That's so funny.
Hopefully they don't listen to this. Anyways, no, actually, hopefully they do, because it's definitely not funny.
And they'll be so proud. They'll be so stoked they made it in.
Hopefully.
What I've noticed is when I talk about people in the show, like, I don't reference them by name, but like I'll reference someone. They like it.
They like it.
They like the attention. They're
main
like,
character
you
moment.
talked about me. Yeah. It's very funny.
I was talked about.
The day the article came out.
The day the article came out was so memorable and so cathartic, I want to say, of just like, wow, my story is like really out in the world. And like, not only was it a big deal, I think in the USC community, but like the Fort Worth community.
Yeah.
And like all these places in my life where I'd been, like, I'm adopted. My birth mother, who I have a relationship with, like, messaged me on Facebook being like, oh my God, like, this article is so amazing. Like, I'm so proud of you.
So proud.
Yeah, that was amazing. Like, it was a really amazing day. It was also scary because there were, you know, some of those returning members, like, posting on social media, like, in support of Lori, the coach. And
I remember this.
that was really hard. But I was like, I can't let these very few haters get me down.
Yeah. Like,
I can't. Like, this is so much bigger than that. And this is about mental health and about the well-being of all the people around me. And at the end of the day, I think you said this in your episode, like, I just want everyone to be safe and happy.
Yeah.
And like, that's a part of OCD for you.
Yeah.
And that's a part of like that's a core value for me too.
Yeah.
So anyways, and it was honestly kind of refreshing to be like, okay, I'm releasing these people from my life, and it's like I never did anything wrong to them, but that was a huge hard part of it that I was talking about in therapy every single week.
I'm sure.
But yeah, I mean, it was really amazing when it came out. Like, I had so many people so proud of me. Like, my parents called me and were like, oh my gosh, we understand so much more. Like, we had no idea what you were going through. My grandparents, like, it was a really, really amazing time. And I'm so glad I did it. And it's, to this day, like, kind of fills me with purpose in my daily assistant job at CAA, doing scheduling emails and rolling calls. But yeah, I mean, I think since then, like, part of my life goal is like, how can we bring more awareness? How can we destigmatize mental illness even more? Like, what else can I be doing in my life to help the people around me, and like on a large scale? Because that's one of the reasons I wanted to be in entertainment, was when I was at the peak of my eating disorder and like really, really, really struggling. There, you know, I was watching like every single piece of media that had to do with eating disorders at the time. I was like, I gotta watch To the Bone on Netflix. And like, there's this film called Feed that Troy Belsario, if you watch Pretty Little Liars, she plays Spencer, wrote and starred in. And it's like the film is about the personification of anorexia, and it was like very powerful. Nothing I'd ever seen before. It was like not about vanity and like being skinny or whatever. It was more about kind of the control aspect and what it looks like in someone's mind. I think like Euphoria is such an interesting, amazing portrayal of mental health. So I was like, I want to dedicate my life to this. And I am a wee assistant at the moment, but it's in the plans. It's in the plans. Yeah.
I love that.
Thanks.
Oh my God, Josie, you're a stud.
Thank you.
I can't believe you did all this.
Yeah, there was something in me of like, I just feel so compelled and I have energy that I really just need to spend towards this. So yeah, it was a wild ride, but we made it out. Coach resigned, actually the day that she found out about the investigation.
Before or after the article?
Before the article.
Yep.
And
Shit.
I'm so far removed, it feels like, from USC now, but I will never stop fighting for the good of that team, I think.
Yeah.
So
what advice would you give to someone who is struggling with disordered eating?
Put yourself in a community of people. For me, that was going to intensive outpatient treatment. Yeah. And like being immersed in a group of people who were going through the same thing. Like that, I think the hardest part of eating disorders is the feeling of shame and feeling of being alone. So the best thing for me was finding that community in outpatient treatment. But there's other ways. There's like online communities. It's like really popped off on social media over the past few years, which I really appreciate. If that's staying close to your family, great. For some people, that's too toxic. But I think finding a community during a really hard time to help you is what gets you through and what got me through. So, yeah.
Okay, well, I have one final question for you, Josie. Yes. I ask this to all my guests. Mm-hmm. What advice would you give to your 16-year-old self?
Oh, God.
I know, little baby Josie.
It's funny because my therapist and I run through this all the time of like, a lot of the things I get emotional and anxious and depressed about these days is like something negative core childhood thing. And I like get emotional thinking about like, oh my God, I was just like trying so hard, like running through life. I would say I love you, which is a weird, it's not like advice, I guess. It's more so like you're doing amazing and you are enough. And there's so much also that you haven't learned. Like being in an eating disorder has taught me so much about the world, about systems of oppression. Like, again, I could talk about this for hours. There's so many things we didn't even touch on, but I love you. There's so much you don't know, and you are enough.
I'm gonna cry.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
I love that, Josie.
Thank you.
I love you.
Thank you. I love you.
You're the best. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Amazing.
Zeke, it's just a love fest.
Oh my God. Did you laugh? I didn't.